Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
I'd like to call the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee for June 17th, 2025 to order. First thing on the agenda, item number 2 is approval of minutes.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motions have been made and seconded to approve the minutes from May 19th, 2025. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the like sign. Ayes have it, motion is carried. Public appearances, I don't believe there's anybody that's not on the agenda, am I correct, Deanna?
No.
Okay, agenda review, Deanna, please.
This is, so I just have the staff memo here, and so tonight we're going to review a conditional use permit, a request by Jeremy Williams for Maplewood Tree Services, and then I have on your agenda a brief discussion of the Greenfield and South Stoner neighborhood plan, and then we'll wrap up with some discussion on new farm residences. So I'm not proposing any changes
Okay, great.
to the agenda.
Thank you very much. Agenda items, conditional use CU 2595-25, request by Jeremy Williams, agent for Justin Vondra, V6 LLC to allow conditional use for horticulture, specialty, and landscaping sales and service on property associated with 1839 County Highway MM. Deanna, would you like to start off?
Yeah, I'm happy to just give my staff report, and then we do have the applicant online, and
We'll go to him next.
all right, we'll do that. So this is at the Fitchburg Farms property, and the proposal is for Maplewood Tree Services to operate out of this site. They would be operating up on the top of the hill, and what they would be doing is they're asking for a conditional use permit for horticultural specialties and landscape sales and services. They intend to store equipment in that eastern building. There's a yellow building at the corner towards the eastern part of the site. And then operate at the top of the hill and storing mulch piles, trees, logs for milling, and the company also intends to burn unusable wood as weather permits. Based on the aerial photographs from 2024, the business has been in operation for several months. Their operations came to staff attention when there was a request for water services. At that time, staff informed the company that they would need a conditional use permit. So I'm just offering some general standards here. If the conditional use permit is approved, that northwest portion of the site, and I guess what I should have just pulled that up for you all.
The right area.
Excuse me.
Yes, I did mean northeast, thank you. Let me just pull up my map for you all. Thanks for catching my error.
Oh, nice. You're going to share it on the screen here. There we go.
Yeah, so it is the northeast portion of the site. So it would be shifting from agriculture to this business use. The properties are directly east to properties zoned business highway, low density residential and rural development directly to the east. There is a mix of businesses and residences directly to the east. And then the property to the north is zoned rural development and used for agricultural uses right now. Staff did receive a call from the property owners to the north expressing their concern with the mulch piles and wood processing. And so staff has just included some photographs in the application in the application package for you. So to limit Maplewood's impacts to neighboring properties, staff is recommending a buffer zone along the north property line and then a buffer zone along the east property line. So we would be staff suggesting that they leave some space of a buffer zone from their operations to the property line of 100 feet to the north and then 50 feet to the east. And then Ag and Rural and Plan Commission could consider if there should be some landscape screening or trees and shrubs as appropriate. There was a conditional use permit issued in 2017 for this building and this eastern building here for a landscape company in 2017. You all might remember that. There was quite a bit of discussion at that time that the building is not built to commercial standards, to commercial building code, so it cannot be used for human occupancy. It can't be used for meetings or office space because it isn't built to the standards for commercial occupancy.
The green roof building or the building that is in this?
The green roof building.
But that's not part of this proposal.
It is.
Oh, it is.
They want to be in this. They are. I think they're already occupying in this building. But it can only be used for storage. It cannot be used for office space or meeting rooms because it's not built to commercial standards. It could be used for office space or meeting rooms, staging for people if it was upgraded, but that has not happened since the 2017. So staff does recommend approval of the conditional use with the 7 conditions, and I'm open to offering, answering any questions or.
What are the 7 conditions, Deanna?
The 7 conditions, yep. So the first one is the standard one, no permit or approval is waived or deemed satisfied by this particular approval. And the approval is based on the submitted application, plans, and staff comments, pretty standard. Maplewood's operation would be limited to the area shown on the submitted plans with equipment storage in the existing buildings, with the exception that operations including wood storage mulch piles would be removed from a buffer zone and from along the driveway to the north. The buffer zone shall extend 100 feet from the north property line and 50 feet from the east property line. And that eastern building may only be used for the storage of equipment. If occupancy is desired, the building must be improved to commercial standards. Additional building permit is needed. Building inspector requires Dane County approval of the private septic system, proper ingress and egress exit lighting, and ADA requirements. Number 5 is that the existing woods and trees on the site will remain, so that what I'm referring to is those existing trees and woods.
Is that above, on the north end, are those also trees and shrubs?
On this property line?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
And that's what separates the
two.
owner that called the northern.
And removal and burning of dead wood shall be compliant with chapter 70-57. That's the open burning code that the fire department refers to. And then the hours of operation shall generally be between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
How many days a week?
I did not specify that,
Okay.
but we certainly can.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
We woke up yesterday and it smelled like smoke, and we're wondering what the heck's going on, and it was a smoldering smoke, and it just lingered and lingered. And I thought, well, maybe it's that Canadian issue going on, but if they're already burning, it's hovering right through our property. It's smoldering, so it isn't like a campfire or something. It's smoldering, like damp wood.
I'll call on you guys to.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just
no, that's
wanted to point it out.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Would we be able to get a copy of those 7?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Deanna. I did view the site myself on Saturday. And I have some concerns, but I'm gonna open up to the applicant, the agent for the applicant, and I'm sorry, Jeremy.
I'm Jeremy, owner and operator of Maplewood Tree Care. How are you guys?
Good.
Thanks for having me today.
Could you tell us about your operation and what you're doing there?
Yeah, yep. I've been an arborist for 19 years. And this is where all my equipment and all my debris comes back to. 1839 County Highway MM. And that land up top, it's about 4 or 5 acres, maybe 3 acres. And that's exactly right. I burn the bad debris, like any wood that's not used for firewood. And that lingering smoke is, I had a fire on Saturday and Sunday. So I think I should probably put that fire out so you don't get lingering smoke a day or two later.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
Did you have a question?
If you have, please finish your presentation.
So what we want to do is store all our equipment in that big shop. So I have a couple of dump trucks and an aerial spider lift and a chipper. And so that we lease half of that shop. And like you said, we don't keep anybody inside the shop. We don't have any office meetings in there. There is no office, there's no bathroom. It's just storage. And then up top, I bring all the mulch and we keep that in a nice clean pile. It's organized. It is getting awfully high. I've contacted a couple companies, like big ones like the Bruce Company, to see if they could use that mulch for anything. Because I know that there's a couple companies in town that break the mulch down and turn it into compost. So that was like my plan at one point. But I keep it nice and clean. It's just clean mulch. It's not mixed with any wood or anything. Then I'd separate the logs into organized piles of milling logs and firewood piles of good firewood that we can split and sell. And then I recently met Legacy Trees, and that's a new way to grow trees. And so I purchased 20 trees from them, and I have to water them. So I would like to turn the power on. There used to be power up there for a tiny home. And I'd like to turn that power on to power the well so that I can hook up a watering system to water the trees. Super small operation. I'm in the field every day pruning and removing trees. There's not a lot of time for planting, but it is something that I want to do in the future and try to get good at it. So I'm just starting out doing that, but it's a small little plot. The concerns on the buffer zone, that all sounds totally appropriate. A friend of mine just moved into the shop. His equipment and started milling. We built a really cool mill. It's 72-inch wide slab horizontal bandsaw mill on a 28-foot-long rail. So the byproduct of that is cutoffs and orders. So we've been stacking that with his forklift. So I leave with my equipment during the day to go do tree work, and then he mills during the day and brings those logs to stage them right on that roadside. So I hear that was a concern, that we should move all the logs off of that east side of that the driveway. Yeah, I agree with that. I actually didn't want those there.
Okay, thank you very much.
I do have a question. There was something new in there. So somebody's milling the wood on site then too?
Yes. Yep.
And where's that happening?
It's in the green warehouse.
In the green roof warehouse.
So the warehouse that we're
Storing equipment.
Yeah, well, there's a problem here to have someone, that building is not designed for occupancy. This has been a long-term issue with the building inspector, that building is not designed for people to be in that building.
Other than when they're
Other than taking out equipment and putting away equipment, yeah.
that's what I thought.
okay.
But that's not part of this request, right?
But it fails to meet a 2017 permit.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
Can they could mill outside.
Yes.
Okay.
That was actually one of the things that we thought about asking for in the future. The thought to get power up on the top side of that property so that we can turn the well on got me excited to get the mill out of my shop because it takes up too much space. I need that shop space for all my equipment. I don't want it to sit outside and get rained on and sit in the sun. So, but this isn't what we're asking for now. But one of the thoughts was to build a mill house up top on that side and run the mill up there because that's where all the heavy logs are. And I like to keep a really clean shop space. So all that clutter out there that's in front of my shop right now with all the wood piles up that driveway, I don't want any of that there. I want it to be nice mowed, nice and clean, and everything up top on the hillside is hidden away.
I have a question again. Isn't the conditional use for the whole property behind the farm all the way down to 14, that whole, even now is presently a cornfield?
Not as how I have this written.
I mean, this is how our map shows.
Yes, that is how the map shows, and that's the parcel lines, but.
That's the whole thing. So if he got a conditional use thing, he could use that whole thing, logs, mills.
No. No.
That's
The way that I wrote the conditions on this conditional use permit, that he would be limited to the operations shown on the submitted plans and.
Which is about 5 acres?
About 3 acres or 4 acres, I think.
So it's that little
think-
square at the top.
Yeah.
Top of the top.
So we're talking
Jeremy,
about.
you're not the owner of that parcel, right? You lease that.
No, sir. Yes, sir, I lease, yep.
Okay.
Is there a well on that parcel?
Yeah, there's a well.
Existing well there.
Yep.
It's just that you.
Septic up there as well.
It
There
seems
was
as
an
though,
illegal home up there for a number of years.
Yes, that's correct. There used to be a tiny home up there.
It wasn't supposed to be there.
Yep, completely illegal, yep.
So why is the well legal then?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean,
Is the well
the
legal?
city doesn't permit a well, the county permits wells.
oh yeah, we just talked about it. So it makes sense to me, like, if there's gonna be fires being started, I can't imagine a fire being started with no water source anywhere.
I do actually have a little water source. It's down at the shop and it's a 250-gallon tote. And I fill that up and I move that around with my skid steer. So I can put a very, very large fire out in about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, with only half of that. So about 100 gallons of water. But that is, and I've met with the fire department several times, and I call on a permit every time I burn.
Fires have to be out by
I'd
dark.
love to have a hose up there. I would love to have a nice big hose just in case, you know. I was out there burning a couple weekends ago with my kids, and it was just too dry, and a couple little random ambers started a couple little tiny fires here and there. So I have to be there the whole time that we're burning. So it's during the days, and yeah, we got to be able to put it out.
Yeah, but the smoldering, the smoke the other day, it was just terrible. I thought, what the heck's going on?
I'm sorry about that. I actually did not put that fire out. So they said when I have a large fire, they say that I have to put the large fire out. And so I have been having medium fires. So Saturday I burned.
The damp bark or sawdust, it was smell.
Yeah. That can be one of the conditions, is maybe I put that fire out at the end of the day.
I think what I was trying to do was say, Fitchburg fire permits, fires have to be out by dark, dusk by dark.
Storage in the existing.
We need to get a little more information on that.
On what part?
Well,
Okay.
what are the parameters of like starting a fire, like a permit,
No,
a burning permit?
there isn't a building up there anymore.
I don't have that.
I do know what they are. The
What I was
parameters are
trying
supposed to
to
be,
do was say that
it's supposed to be died down.
operate here
Out by
with equipment
dark.
storage in that
Now,
existing
anybody
building
who
down here.
has burned in the country
Then also number
knows you're not gonna totally, unless you bury it, you're not gonna totally put it out. It's just, anyway, you can put the water on it,
Well,
it's still
I
gonna
was
smoke.
trying to say
Actually, if you
was
put water on it, it smokes more.
Yeah, I understand, it shouldn't, I'm just,
It's worse.
I'm confused.
So
I was
that's what
trying to
we
figure
had.
out
Yeah,
exactly
what
Saturday and
what I
Sunday.
was trying to say was,
Yeah,
with
I burn
equipment
all the
storage
time,
in that
always call
existing
permits,
That's what I was
and
trying to
always
say.
control it with a skid loader.
Okay.
And, you know, in the woods, and trying to manage the woods, man.
Yeah, it sounds like this guy can use a well.
Does our fire department have any issue?
I was
with
envisioning it
drive
was
with
part of the C.
Long access
That's
drive?
not, that's not in the.
So the CU isn't just that square.
Well, it is too, because it's in that building, it's
Yeah,
illegal.
the CU is that square
In the
plus the
building, right.
existing.
He's not he is not, correct me if I'm wrong, Deanna.
So he uses.
We wanted to build a house
I don't
once, and
want
they
it
said
to.
that
I
we had to
didn't.
widen our driveway way out and have a circle roundabout.
Deanna?
Yeah.
That was the stipulation.
Yeah,
So
I'm-
now is he gonna have that on his 3 or 4 acres where fire equipment can make a circle?
Good, I'm
Seems like a
sorry,
long
we were having a
access
funny
road.
conversation, cause I was unsure if the CU is just the little square, then why are we talking about the green building, but I guess the CU is the whole area.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to
No,
clarify.
I understood. Did you get your question answered?
So my intention here was that he would be able to operate in here and then operate in that existing building with storage, was my intention here. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, we can clarify that. However you think is best.
Is the fire department okay with the drive that's there in case they have to go up to put?
Yes, the fire department has reviewed this and they are okay as long as he pulls his permits.
Okay. Any other questions that the committee would have?
I've got a few.
Go ahead, Roger.
Let's go back to that sawmill that you're talking about. Do I understand that that sawmill is in the building?
Yes, it's in the warehouse, yep.
And it is operating in that building?
Yep.
And it's not in compliance?
I did not know that there is a compliance on that. So is that?
The way it reads right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's for machinery storage only.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not a building that has been designed for an operator to be working out of.
Correct.
It needs to be brought up to commercial standards before someone can be occupying it and operating equipment.
Right. So we're out of compliance on that issue right now. Because it is operated in a building that has not been inspected for that purpose. Okay, you mentioned something about taking that sawmill out and maybe moving it up closer to your source of your logs with a building for that. What is your, is that your intention?
We talked about doing that. Yeah, we asked Justin, the landowner, if we could build our own mill house up there with logs that we mill ourselves. And he said as long as, everything can be torn down or moved, nothing can be permanent, because he doesn't, have any specific plans for the property yet. But he said, if you guys want to build something that is on your own, go for it. So, and of course, he said everything would have to pass to Fitchburg standards, right?
What is the dB rating for noise level for that? I mean, is it?
That's a good question. We wear headphones when we operate the machine. It's electric. It's a 25-horse electric motor. So really, the noise that it makes is I think it's a 112-inch bandsaw blade running through the saw. That's really, it's actually pretty cool.
If you don't have a motor running, if it's electric, the noise would be certainly less than if there were a motor running.
Would that need a new?
Yeah, pretty quiet.
That needs a building permit.
To another company, is it not?
And it would be, Dan, you said that
So
there would be no building up there.
You would need a building permit.
Yeah, that's
a whole different issue.
That's not part of this discussion.
Part of this application.
Okay, what?
Yep, but it's good to bring it up.
What's your time frame on something to do that?
That's a good question. Yeah, so if we are out of compliance, this needs to be done immediately, is get Josh out of that shop, right? So no working in the shop.
You can store it in the shop as long, but you can't
drag
operate
it outside to operate it, apparently.
You can't operate
Right.
it.
Is it portable?
Yep. No.
Oh, well then.
Totally stationary.
Okay, so you can't
Can we go back to the screen so I can
build a building? So we got that solved. So now we're back down to your building. Your building is now in compliance for your trucks and your other equipment, correct?
Storage.
Yes.
So we got that solved. Okay. I want to move to another issue. The 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer. You got a 50-foot buffer on the east and 100 on the north. Why the difference?
Just because there's more business uses on the east.
East side.
But we can change that. I mean,
Larger buffer.
yeah.
It seems like the buffers
So you're
are
saying there's
flip-flops.
residential to the north, business to the?
Well, potentially. Right now it's a field. It's a.
To the north, yeah. I wish I could just see my map, but
Yeah, it's
North
agriculture.
Is it
farm.
Agriculture.
Yeah. So the north, we're talking about that northern. We're talking about that northern fence line with a cornfield to the north on the other side of the fence line. Along the east side where the homes are and everything, that's a 50-foot. Plus, and I think this is
There's
something
a lot of
for
trees
your,
there.
there's trees there. There's also a berm.
A small berm.
There's a berm there along with the 50-foot that is being proposed. The 50-foot would probably take in part of the driveway that's going to go up there. So is that 50-foot all right with you folks?
Well, we don't have anything, I mean, that's Staley and.
Okay, you're the north.
We're the north, the farm of the
Okay.
north.
Do you have any problem with 50-foot to the north just along the same as the side?
100.
Well,
Why the 100?
We're looking at the future. Eventually, we're gonna get, well, we are old. Eventually, we're gonna want something to benefit us, to be able for like resell. We'll have to get a bunch of stuff up there and potentially housing or stuff goes down there and all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, this nice part, what the heck's that? Oh, that whining, that's a sawmill and that's smoldering wood chips, that's noise, that's doing that every day. Well, our values.
Okay, I have a question for you, Jeremy. That 100-foot on the top, how does that inhibit your operation, if at all? Are you happy with the 50-foot?
I think zero. I think it would affect us zero if I don't keep up with organization. It's that's the whole point to the fires is to be able to keep up with organizing. But yeah, I actually mow that whole area. I rented a Fecon forestry mulcher. So I love trees and I love woods and I love really pretty property. And so that whole north tree line going all the way west, all the way down into the woods on the highway there,
Yeah.
I cleaned that whole woods up, and I 2 times now in the last couple of years I've raised the skirt height on all the trees, and I go for walks underneath there, and I take my kids on little 4-wheelers and we go riding under there. So, and I do mow that. It takes me like 6 hours a week to mow it. So I take real good care of it. The 100-foot buffer, I feel like is no problem.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like, and you know, we could follow, you know, real strict guidelines. If you want me to put a fire out completely, let's put it out every single night. That's perfectly fine.
Ian, can you show me with the measure tool how far 100 feet lands?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think it lands about where the halfway point to that, it looks like gravel.
Oh, okay. That is a good call. If you could show us that. Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
That's what I'm driving at.
I'm way on that right now. So I don't have time to organize all the time. So if I have a busy week or two, we come in with like 10 or 12 loads, and the dump truck just dumps the load. So that all needs to be organized. I need to move the logs that are valuable onto a pile, and I organize those, like oak is a pile, elm is a pile, cherry is a pile, hickory is a pile, and then I move like the smaller stuff that can be split into firewood and sold, move that into a different section, and then the tips and stuff is what we burn. So if you point that little thing up a little higher, because right now it says 105 feet. 60, 50, yeah, keep going a little bit. Yeah, I would like to ask for 50 feet, because I think I'm right to that 50-foot already, with a lot of logs. But I do want to keep it clean for the neighbors, you know.
I've got an idea.
So if you're bringing in 10 or 12 loads of logs a day,
A
how
week.
long is that going to take to fill up that little area there?
That's a good question. I've actually asked the mill that I don't want the mill at the shop anymore, and so I'm actually in the process of having him move out, and that was one of my thoughts, is that he could build his own shop, mill house up top. But I don't think it's going to happen. He's trying to find his own shop. So
Okay, anybody from the committee have any other questions? Roger, did you get all your questions answered? You are done?
No, not done.
Go ahead, you have the floor, Roger.
Okay. I understand what you're saying on value, and I fully agree. Today it's a cornfield and whatnot. This business is operating where that 100-foot comes in, really comes into his operation quite a ways. Deanna, is there some way or other that in the approval of this at 50 feet, that we would be able to say that as soon as they start to develop, as their structures are being built on that rural residential zoning, that the 100-foot would have to be put in?
I don't think that's fair. He's gonna rely on that.
Huh?
He's gonna rely on that 50 feet, and then you're gonna take it away from him on some hypothetical
Well, he'd have
development
to-
that's not approved to be
But he's
developed.
gonna have to go out further than that 5 acres if he's got 10 or 12 truckloads of logs coming in every day. He's not gonna stay in that five acres.
With a sawmill up there?
I think
Have
the
you been
sawmill
out
is
The
leaving.
sawmill's leaving.
Sawmill is out.
But I mean,
No, he's saying about.
the parcel that you own
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen.
isn't
Well, we've seen a lot of,
for a
He
subdivision.
would need a building
No,
permit
well,
to
it's
do that.
zoned rural
There's no way.
development.
Okay,
I mean, that's one of
Roger's
the
got
last
it.
parcels.
It's zoned rural development right now.
ours is our
And I
farm
can-
rural
I
development.
can understand why the 50-foot is, because that zoning is different than the other, so, Deanna's going with 100-foot for development purposes. So.
That's the first time I heard that our farm is rural development. We've always been told we can't develop there for 50 years.
I'm not gonna deny that, but that's just what the zoning is. But no, you cannot develop until, the urban service area expands.
Yeah.
And that might be 50 years.
And that's water and sewer or change of zoning.
Yeah, but our neighbors, they have that sand pit over there in Corey, so they won't be running septic and water down through there.
They will not.
No.
We probably won't see it in our lifetime, and your children may not see it in their
And
lifetime.
then, we feel that we're sort of the buffer between Fitchburg and Oregon. Oregon does not wanna progress up our way. Fitchburg does not want anything to happen down there, so it's like,
We're just
We're
like a
dead
little
man's
island there with.
We're a solid half mile to a mile away from Oregon's jurisdiction.
Yes, we're
The other side of him.
a long ways. Now, Roger, you've got the floor, so.
Well, I guess.
We're getting out of sync.
I guess I was just coming back to the 50-foot on the east and the difference between the 50 and the 100-foot on the north. And seeing that is a cornfield with development way down the line. Why not be consistent with 50-foot to the north as well as to the south? As a consequence, this will, on behalf of Jeremy, this will enhance his business. And so, but if I thought that there was a chance for in the next 10, 15 years that there would be houses on there, which is not likely, yeah, we would want to do that. We wouldn't want to change back and forth like I originally thought. So I recommend that we look at 50 around the entire parameter.
I think it's a good point, especially since there's all those trees and shrubs there.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
there's
another
already
buffer.
screening
Yeah,
that he's
Is
taking
that all
care
right
of.
with you?
yeah.
You've got the floor,
you
right?
know, I've always understood that if you give an inch, you end up, they take a mile. And that's why.
An example?
Look at all they did on the condition, without a conditional use. We have logs all over, they're burning stuff, they got stuff in the shed.
Then we
So-
got Doopies down there who they were only supposed to have a certain number of vehicles there. So then they bought a little bit more property and now they have cars all over down there. So,
Well, we don't, they're there, we're just.
Okay.
so nothing
Well,
stays
Roger,
as
you
it
have the
is.
floor.
I would go back and maintain that we entertain that idea of consistent perimeter footage.
And how will we monitor
Does that
this?
answer your?
What do you mean, how do you mind? Well,
How are we gonna monitor this to make?
The zoning, the zoning will be enforced by the
City staff.
compliance officer.
You're only enforced by the neighbor complaining to you guys.
That's how most things happen around
Yeah.
here.
And that triggers the
And
compliance officer.
Once they're there, they say it's better to do it and ask forgiveness later on.
Now, who else, Roger, did you?
I think that's right. In fact, I would make a motion to amend the staff's report on that when we get to it. When we get to it.
Any
So
other, are
what's
you?
the issue with the water, like wanting to reactivate the well? Cause that makes sense to me if we're gonna burn stuff, that we would have a water source that's not a plastic tank.
Yeah, I mean.
And grow
this
trees.
Will, once the conditional, if there's a conditional use permit issued to allow this business to work and operate on this site, then we will okay the electricity to run the well.
Okay.
Any other committee members have, before we bring the,
I just want to clarify, so in that quadrant, you burn, you store, but that's it? Do you chip the wood there too?
Sounds like it.
No, we don't chip the wood, no.
Okay, so you're just because I'm just looking at the conditions, and it talks about storage and mulch piles, and I just want to make sure that we shouldn't add that you also can't do any wood processing in that buffer zone. But
Oh,
so
sure.
I want to be clear
Sure.
what you exactly do up there.
Oh, so yeah, I have a log splitter, and like a Caterpillar 289 tracked skid steer, and so there is machinery driving around and processing the wood. So all the wood,
Okay.
I go out there with my kids and sometimes employees, and we split firewood, to try to make a little bit of money off of the byproduct of owning a tree service.
Right.
And that was the point to the sawmill, is to try to, like, you would not believe how amazing some trees look when you cut the log open and you turn it into lumber. It's unbelievable. So I can't just throw away huge logs. I have to be able to mill it into lumber and let people build something with it that they can use for generations rather
Yeah.
than just cut it into firewood.
That's understandable and admirable. So I would probably, if you want to add
The dry the
your
wood part is
amendment.
another.
At that point,
Would you dry the wood with like
Well,
a
I'm just
kiln or
saying.
something like this, or air dry?
We wanted to build our own kiln. Yeah, we wanted to build our own kiln.
Right? Just goes.
What's that?
Goes. That's how things progress.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's
Yeah.
Okay,
big
thank
problem.
you. Thank you for your clarification.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other committee members that have your ends up? And yet, Adam or George, you have anything to?
I don't know if there's anything you can add to a conditional use on this circumstance. If you wanted to limit his operation, in the buffer area. I don't know if that,
I mean, no commercial operations in a buffer area is kind of all inclusive.
I mean, it
Wood
seems like
processing, I was thinking.
you have understanding that, you have a buffer zone and that out of respect for the neighborhood.
Yeah, you keep that buffer zone clean, no log storage, no mulch in the 50-foot buffer zone. Is that what you guys
I
mean
don't
by
know
that?
how you monitor that either.
Is there like good liability? Like, I don't know if this is like going into a gray area, but it seems like if fires are burning all night or fires are not being put out and there's no water source, this just screams like liability to me.
My understanding from what Jeremy said is that
People living around there.
the fire happens and then it's coals and it's not an open flame type fire at that
Correct.
point.
Smoldering smoke.
Yep,
Yeah.
correct.
And
I never add any more wood to the fire after about noon. So from like 7 o'clock to noon, I'm building the fire, and it gets pretty big. And then from noon till about 4 or 5 4 or 5 o'clock is usually when I leave. And that's a good long time that the fire burns down. Yeah, and so when I come back in the morning, it's just like a 3 or 4 or 5, 6 logs that have smoldered all the way down to about a foot high, and there is no flames. It just is smoldering. So I completely understand if somebody's bothered by that smoke smell. That should be maybe one of the things that I have to do is make sure that I put the fire out completely.
How often do you burn?
The CU don't have the water source.
Honestly, it's not that much.
To the well, though.
I try to be as strategic as I can. Somebody mentioned that it seems like it's kind of a liability. You have these huge piles of wood, and then burning next to it. I think that all the time. and some of the log piles I feel like could have value of like $100,000 if it was all milled properly. And so I'm just looking at it just like I cannot let that start on fire. So I'm super, super careful.
But the other part that you are burning, how often do you do that?
Oh yeah, how often? I only burn before it's gonna rain, and last year was probably only 10 fires, but this year I've probably had 5 fires already. So I recently had a nice big fire, and then went home, and at 8 o'clock, the Fitchburg Fire Department got a call, and so then they came out and they said, hey, how are you going to put this fire out? And they had me come out, and I put the fire out for them, or in front of them. And that's when they checked everything out, and they said you have to file for a permit every time. So I never used to file for a permit until this year. And he said every time you have a fire here, you have to call in and you have to file for a permit.
That's
And it
playing
has to
with
be out by
fire.
dark.
And you did it Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, sir. Yep, I have a
So
permit
how
for
can
both of those.
the fire be out at dark, but yet it smolders all night? I mean, the fire's gotta be out, not.
I don't know that it does. I can't really speak to this, but that's never been my understanding of a burn permit. The fire has to be
No flame.
no flame. I don't know that, I think putting water on the fire to extinguish it is gonna give you worse
More smoke.
smoke.
You would have to like.
I think his method of controlling it, adding nothing after noon, and letting it burn down is probably best case scenario.
We were there one morning, or evening it was, and all of a sudden we heard this boom. What the heck is that? We went over and seen if Staley's something happened or something blew up or something like this. And Scott says, no, he says somebody had one of these things you get and you shoot them with a shotgun and it lights fires.
Oh, the tannerite?
We don't know if it was him or if it was.
Well, we don't know who did it, but it was
But
like,
it was on that
all of a
property.
sudden was it early morning or evening?
No, it was evening because I.
And we thought, what the heck, did something blow up around here? So
Oh my goodness.
like we started calling, what we call it, the Scott's Daily. What did something blow up over there? Are you home? And
He said that, no, they're out there shooting off something.
to start one of these fires. Do you remember that?
It might not have been him, but it was when the little house was still up there, so.
It's like different people.
That's when that house was up above there.
I don't think.
Yeah,
Maybe
that
it
was-
was, no, he's right, it was after the house was removed.
Oh, okay, because that'd be a whole different issue if it was another house.
So how do you start your fires?
I just use a little tiny propane torch. I don't use any fuel. I consider myself. Oh yeah.
I would like to call.
I consider myself a professional.
You have a skid loader that's probably have stirred up a fire and buried
Yeah,
it.
I guess, I mean, you could ask.
You know, I've done that many times with my skid loader is if it gets smoldering, you just move the pile around and bury it with some soil and.
Yeah, that's what I did when the Fitchburg Fire Department came out. I separated all the coals and then used it.
So that their comments go on the record. So,
Thank you.
Mickey, would you step up to the table and Mickey and Nancy, and then
To do what now?
step up to the table. I want to make sure your comments are in the record.
Oh.
So
What our
far they are
concerns
not.
are?
So far they are not, so we need to do that.
What brought you here?
The potential of noise, potential of now the smoke. I didn't realize that we were going to get the smog issue or musty burning. And also, a gentleman passed away and he said, Wes, did you see what's happening up there in the hill? He's passed away, so I won't mention his name, but he says, boy, I can't see letting somebody do that.
Well, I have an issue with the smoldering. We have a grandson that lives right on the farm with us, and he has asthma. And smoldering smoke is a no-no for him. So does that mean that that kid's gotta stay on medicine, can't go outside when we hear the smoldering's going on? Because you can smell it way up in Mance Pit. So our son, we live here, right where the border is, and our son lives down on MM, about 100 yards, about a football length of field from our house. And he has asthma, and the smoldering thing bothers me. The rest of it I don't care about, but I don't think our grandson should have to stay in the house.
And we've already talked about how it started out, and it's already the growth of it getting a conditional use. Okay, the mill's going to be moved up in the hill. Okay, there's going to be running water up there. There's going to be
And there's no
more
room.
stuff. There's not going to be enough room for you.
For 10
it
loads
would
of-
be
logs
bad
come in every
for
day.
availability to store your logs decent? Because it's only, what was it, 3 or 4 acres?
5 acres, you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he'll never be able to unload 10 to 12 dump truck loads of wood and keep it in that 5 acres. There's no way you can do it, because if you've been up there, you see how much area is already taken, and that's not bringing in all these trucks load of more stuff.
Jeremy, do you lease more than the 3 to 5 acres? So you'd be infringing on the landowner's agricultural operations, and he certainly wouldn't be happy about a wrecked bean field or corn. So
That's
it's
correct.
limited.
Yep. I have a designated outlined area on the lease, and if you clicked it back a couple times, Deanna, it's outlined in red.
What I'm getting at is he may grow in density, but he's not going to grow in footprint.
If he can keep up with his cleanup.
No, but the smoke issue is an issue. You get it from both sides. The smoke
Exactly.
you're getting the
Man's
smoke you're getting
burning.
from Mance
And-
is going to be a lot closer to your grandson.
Yeah, but that's burning in a wood burner. It isn't
No,
smoldering,
no, it's not.
stinky.
No, they burn.
He
they-
burns
they
in the
open
pit.
burn. They
He
open
burns
burn.
in the pit.
I was just there the other day.
Not that often, no, not like this.
I don't know the frequency, but just so you're aware of it.
Oh yeah, I know they burn.
Well, the burning the other night was this outfit right here. And
That's fair.
we can smell it, so can my grandson. I mean, you can
It's
actually
very close.
see and it's not the Canadian thing coming this way, it's coming,
Okay.
you know, so that's my concern, is my grandson.
Okay. Any other concerns that you two have? As far as your land, you have cropland right up to the fence line, correct? Okay.
Do you see any potential solutions?
Yeah, fire out at the end.
I do. I don't know how reasonable this is, but maybe I'm only allowed to burn as the wind is blowing southeast or south. I don't know if that's even doable, but I could try, right?
If you had a northeast wind, it'd solve it.
Oh,
Right now, I bet
That would
you.
be a good neighbor. I mean, I'm all about, like, in the agricultural community, just being a good neighbor for one another. And like, we all have stuff to do. We're all like trying to make it and like live our best life. And so if we could just find a way to work together where everyone is just okay, I think that's my.
Yeah. Maybe only a couple specific days in the month I have the window to burn and organize. Maybe that's a solution too.
Why do
Like,
you have
hey,
it up
you only
there?
get.
Excuse me, why do you have it up there on top of the hill? Why don't you have it down behind the greenhouse in that area? There's buildings down there. That's more of a industrial area, small business.
That's a good question.
Not up.
Yeah.
Like down behind the greenhouse, you know, that's all that guy's land too, that you're leasing from. He's got that land to go that way.
Behind the green roof shed.
South of the trees, between the
And
trees.
back this way.
But will that start on fire then if this fire becomes?
No. That if you go behind the building there and head towards 14.
The green roof?
Yeah, if you go where the red is, show them the whole lot, show them your lot thing.
Yeah.
If you have
I know. I understand what you're saying there.
Jeremy,
The only reason I went up top is when I originally moved in. So the greenhouse brings all its waste up top as well. It's not nearly the amount of debris that I bring back up, but it's used potting soil and dying plants and stuff like that. And he would bring it up and just keep piling it up on the property line on this like berm. In the woods, and I want to preserve woods. I think woods are really important. So I said, don't put anything in the woods anymore. Let's bring it outside the woods. And that's just how it all started. And I just kept organizing everything up there. But see what you're saying.
Because
more
there's
on the north.
down the hill behind the greenhouses.
In the greenhouse, yeah.
Down the hill.
North of the greenhouses.
No. West of the greenhouses.
You go west of the greenhouses, then you're in the agricultural area. and that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
North is up on
Where,
this.
where is the split between agriculture and what he's trying to get rezoned or
He's just getting a conditional use, not rezoning this.
conditional?
Yep, just like a
Oh,
conditional
isn't that
use.
where you're presently at, or where the logs is, isn't that zoned agriculture, or what is that zone?
A conditional use is basically like a permission slip.
So that is agriculture, but he's asking for a different,
What is the zoning on this?
Rural development.
Rural, so it's the same zoning as yours.
Ours is rural development?
It
yeah,
is.
that's why I thought it was strange.
I
If we have rural development, we can't develop. Might as well leave it in agriculture and pay less.
Well, agriculture is a permitted.
Me
Pay less
too.
taxes.
Nancy, agriculture is a
Just leave it
permitted
in
use on rural
agriculture,
development.
I'm all about that, right?
And single family.
Agriculture is a permitted use on,
Farming it, right,
on
Farm?
rural development.
Okay, so is our taxes cheaper than if we had this agriculture?
You could pasture it.
The only
I'll
difference
get
would
some
be,
goats.
the only difference would be, Nancy, if you qualified for the what helped me, Deanna, with the farmland program.
Farmland preservation tax
Farmland
credit
preservation.
program, but you don't, because your zoning is rural.
Let's get this fire thing settled. You mentioned the wind. If you were to burn where you are right now as one alternative, you'd have to look at a northeast wind.
Wouldn't it be, I would only burn it.
It's
From the
it's the
north.
opposite, yeah, a northeasterly wind comes from the
Yeah.
northeast.
Yeah.
That will take it down across the field towards the green.
Towards the greener.
Away from the library.
But that is
Yeah.
not a commonly occurring
No.
wind by
I
any
don't know a
means.
lot
No.
about
No.
wind.
You're not
So-
gonna get that wind
So
quicker than.
if that's not, then that's not going to, yeah, and that's only going to happen in the wintertime.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's a good
It
time.
doesn't happen very
Light
often in the
fire.
summer. So this alternative area to burn, I'm not quite clear. Does that sound like an idea that you would?
It's not
I
as
think,
easy.
I don't think they're,
We
I
can't
think
really put that
he needs to be
condition.
burning where he has access to that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where there's water available.
And the well's up top.
So what alternative would we offer as a suggestion for where?
I think that he would have to be near the water source, so wherever that is where he probably needs to do his burns.
Kind of about right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Well, the electric is right, that electric box, and then the septic is,
Yeah, the box is right up in the middle of their operation there.
Yep.
Is the issue of burning even part of the conditional use?
But then the smoke
can
would
add
be
it.
going
We
toward
can add
Highway
But, I
14.
mean, everybody has a right to
Yeah,
burn if you get a
I-
burn permit.
I
I
think as
don't
long
think
as they're
this,
burning
that
in
issue,
compliance
I
with
think
their
it's a
burn
good issue
I
for
think the two neighbors
neighborliness.
could work it out, like
Right,
just to
right,
be good
but
to
I
one
don't think
another.
it's an issue of
Yeah,
the
it's probably
conditional
not
use.
something that we can control, but
Yeah.
I think it's something that I mentioned for the record, like just
I
be a
agree,
good
yes,
neighbor.
right.
Like that's just kind of how I want to live my life, and I hope my neighbors respect that too.
Okay, now that we've got everybody pretty well
Don't you dare come
had a
near me,
chance
Adam.
to discuss it, as chair, I had a couple questions as chair. What will the, in the condition, or in the buffer area, what will the buffer area consist of? Will that be agricultural crops? Will that be mowed grass? What will be allowed in that?
I did not specify that. The way that I wrote the conditional use permit is that there would be no operations of Maplewood in there. I think you could certainly, I don't know that the 50-foot is gonna make it very amenable to crops in there. But you certainly could request some additional plantings or trees or something in there. But I did not specify that.
but he did, he mentioned about
He's
planting
been
some
planting
trees.
some trees.
The planting of the trees then makes that much more permanent.
It also
And
poses more fire.
versus.
My question wasn't to plant trees, it was to grow trees.
Oh.
Yeah, so just a tree grower, is called Legacy Trees. It's a new way to grow and plant trees for customers. Rather than most nurseries, they grow them in the ground and then you ball and burlap that, and that's pretty invasive on the root system. So this one is you grow it above ground in a pallet, and you just pick that pallet up, and it's so much easier to plant that. I mean, it's 15 to 20 minutes to plant that tree instead of an hour and a half as for a big ball and burlap.
So they're not leaving the
And
trees
so
there,
I
you're
bought.
selling them.
Yes, so I bought 20 of them. It was like $2,800. And then at the end of it, he's like, oh yeah, and by the way, you have to have a totally legit watering system. It has to be watered twice a day, every single day. Otherwise they'll die. And I don't have any water up there. And I was like, okay. So I think 6 of them or 7 of them died. And that's when I got the 250-gallon tote. So I drive up there every couple of days and I water it a little bit, but yeah, I'd like to hook up a nice watering system to that. So those are not permanent. Those are so that I can sell them to homeowners.
Okay, we got to wrap this up. So my 2 cents on it, as chair, I speak last. I would have rather seen a bigger berm versus a smaller buffer area, so that it could become, so that it would stay agriculture. That would be matching uses between the two. That would be my preference as chair, but I'm just one part of this committee, so. And yes, 50 foot would not be big enough, and I agree with you, Deanna, on that. The 100 foot would be, and that's when the 100 foot, I would assume that would be part of the crop planting. So that was just my 2 cents.
So
I just disagree with more than 50, because what are you buffering?
Yeah.
Aesthetic, or I mean, you can't see that from anywhere. It's most out of view where it currently is, and there's not a residence next to it.
It's a cornfield.
It's a
What are you buffering?
There's 80 acres of buffer there.
But it's showing us, if you've been up there, Adam, the storage, the tree storage goes all the way to the fence line now.
Yeah, and we bring that
And
back.
if we bring it back 50 feet, it's what happens in that buffer area is my concern.
Well, he's
So
mowing, he says he's mowing it though. So if he's mowing it as grass.
So if it's mowed as grass, then it's not an agricultural product. If it's 100 feet and it's part of the tillage, it won't happen this year.
Well, why don't you plant the trees there and grow them and sell them out of the ground, or put those pallets there and grow those trees in those pallets? The guy needs water to do this though.
So anyway, that's my.
It'd be pretty far away from the water.
Yeah, that's my.
I think the 50-foot buffer could just stay as, you're not, like as for me, I'm not allowed to put any of my byproduct from the tree service in that 50-foot buffer. That sounds more appropriate, right?
But it has to be
No wood
maintained,
storage.
or you'll have the same, just have scrub. It'll grow up the
Tall grass.
It'll grow up the scrub trees.
They'll have those pallets with trees there, and they'll weed whack it, and then they'll have water.
I call for a question.
Okay.
I call for a question.
Okay, there's been a call, motion made, a call for the question. All those in favor?
Well, wait a second.
We gotta.
Are you gonna?
No, you have to vote on calling for the question. Robert's Rule of Order. You call the question, that has to go to an immediate vote.
Oh, okay.
So, there's been a call for a question. All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The question is called. Now, make the motion.
I make a motion that the proposed buffer area involving this 3 acres to be 50 feet to the east and 50 feet to the north, on the north side. And that within that buffer area, no material will be allowed.
No commercial operation.
No commercial allowed.
But what about if he wants to put those pallets with those trees?
That would have to be further down.
They'd have to be out of there. There'd be nothing in there.
It's actually
It's too far away from the water
Yeah.
anyway.
The other thing, now, let me ask this, does the building go in with the same motion?
Yes.
Okay, I also include in the building that the building be used exclusively for machinery storage only, no occupancy.
Like sawmill.
And the sawmill, well, we know he's got to remove the sawmill out of there. But by making sure that's exclusive what it is approved for right now, it has to be changed from the sawmill in there. So that would be my proposal for a motion.
I like that. I don't know that it's necessary to mention that because that's already a standing condition of his conditional use.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just not in compliance, so I'm
have
sure
a friendly
staff will
amendment,
deal
but
with it.
before we get a second, I have a friendly amendment. That he maintain the 50-foot. And that has to be maintained in some way,
let's define
either
mowed.
crop or maintained.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, all you're gonna get is just junk. Scrub, it's gonna grow up the trees, and if you look at the Copus property, that's a classic example of it.
You're right.
Can I
So
ask
is there a
for
second?
I have
Oh, no.
clarification before, of Rogers. So I'm looking at condition number 3. So I think what you're saying is the 100 feet buffer to the north is changed to 50 feet.
Correct.
And then, so it says, with the exception that operations including wood storage and mulch piles shall be removed from the buffer zone. And then, so are you saying, and no wood processing? I think that was the term that was used, and no wood processing.
In that buffer.
In that buffer.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Well, let me just reiterate so that I make sure that we're all on. So we're going to approve with the conditions of staff discussed with the changes of 50 foot to the north, and that this buffer area would be maintained by mowing or crops, and that not in the buffer would be no wood storage, mulch piles, and no wood processing.
Correct.
Okay, and then we can clarify, Roger, number 4, if you would like, that the building may only be used for storage of machinery and equipment exclusively.
Correct.
That a motion? There's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor of said motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh my God. Micah, you've been so quiet.
Oh, okay, so who was opposed?
I was. and Mike
I agree with everything that's been said.
Oh,
Micah was in favor.
Was he in
said
favor?
aye.
Okay, Mark was the only opposed.
Yeah, Micah, can you clarify, was your aye in approval or?
Yes, I am approving the 50 foot all the way around.
Okay, so you're in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
If conditions are not met, do you know can
As a-
conditional use permits be revoked?
And
I think that's a good reminder.
As a sidebar before Jeremy go, I'd like you to consider all alternatives on that burning issue.
Absolutely.
You're burning maybe eight times a year or once a month if that.
Yeah.
But please take into consideration the neighbor's issue and anything you can do, move it, watch for wind conditions, whatever.
Just be mindful. And
Be
also
very mindful of that and do the best you can.
And consider that conditional use permits can be revoked too. So like, if you're doing a good job and nobody's complaining about you, I think, business and life will be pretty good. So I would just try to
It's a threat.
I would just try to just operate in that way. That's my suggestion.
Well, I think if we have a discussion with him.
Yes.
I mean, if he wants to let us know when he's gonna do this.
Yes.
We have an issue that our son can go down to his grandma and swim all for 2 days. But if it comes upon us fast, it's not good for him.
Sure, yeah.
A few times a year.
Well, and this has all been a surprise to us, all this going on. Nobody came and said, geez, I'd like to do this, we'd like to build this. It was just like, here it is, take it, live with it.
Okay.
Did you pick up on that, Jeremy, what was just said about maybe talking to them when you're gonna do it? Burn?
I would love to meet you guys. You could have my phone number. I could send you a text and say, does it work for you if I have a fire this weekend, kind of thing.
There you go.
Communication between two property owners would be, or the leaser and the property owners would be very crucial here, so please do that.
Yeah.
And the Urans live right across from the camper place, their driveway is, so please communicate with them, stop and talk to them, and try to set up a reasonable.
We're not totally bad.
Okay, very good. Motion, that motion been carried, and we will send that to the Plan Commission, and
Thank you for coming.
thank you for
Jeremy,
Jeremy, thank you for coming, thank you.
I just have a comment, not to him, but it's
Thank you for having me.
It's suffocating. It's just there's stuff coming from all directions. We got the highway, we got this business, we got Doopies, we got camper, the corral place across, we got the digger in this house, this place, and then we got the campers, and then we got our son and us, and then we got Mance. So it's like our farm is being smothered.
And we have 4 or 5 acres across the other side of the road, and the railroad track, and the correctional, it's landlocked.
Yeah, they don't, and
They still put a value on it, and we fight them every year for taxes, say, well, give
because
us,
they said land is worth something,
a way to
but
get
we
in
can't do
there.
nothing with it.
And, have you had
Sell it to 'em.
have you had any success with the assessor on that?
And none. Well, we've met, and he hasn't increased the value, but he's got a value at $5,000. But it's dead land.
Yeah.
It's covered by the corrections, and they don't want to swap. We've already talked to them. Well, you take this, because it's on your side, and we'll take down by the marsh, where we have some of the state land, and we'd swap. Well, that was too much work, too much paperwork.
Caused by when they
road
put in Highway 14
Yeah.
in 1969.
69 was it when it opened, yeah, because I was a
69.
senior.
Yep. When that's been a continual problem.
So, and we've been there forever. My family's been there forever, so.
Well, we appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming in.
And there's openings on this committee sometimes too, so you being like in the rural area and farming here in Fitchburg, one of you or maybe look into a spot.
Well, like I said earlier, we're getting old, and we're gonna.
You don't look old.
Get
But
on
our
my
son-
body someday.
Our son will inherit it, so it's gonna stay in the family.
But it's like, you gotta look out for the future too, because everything could come right up around, and all of a sudden you're like dead property.
I would like to entertain a comment too on, we did a large timber harvest. And the company that we hired that did the timber harvest did a lot of pruning of walnut trees down off of M and behind Berry Stables up in Briarwood. And there was no place in Fitchburg to get rid of any kind of limbwood, that was larger than 1 inch diameter.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And
Jeremy might take it.
it's like, I'm sure Jeremy runs into the same situation. You can take down a tree, but what are you gonna do with that limbwood? And he was this gentleman that we hired that did a couple versions of timber harvest over the years. He said there's nowhere in Fitchburg to get rid of any of this stuff, and he had to take it to the Dane County landfill. And it seems like there's an opportunity there, but it's also a problem right now. That, what are you gonna do?
It has to be chipped. They have to chip anything up to about a foot in diameter. They usually chip.
Well,
And
I think you should all hang around and talk about this as soon as we get done with this meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
But
because
I
we're
just,
really
I just
short
wanted
on
to,
time.
yeah, I just wanted to, I didn't wanna open it up
What's
for
urban
discussion.
school over there?
This is something that's gonna be
Good
ongoing. and-
spot to sit
Urban's
and
doing
chat.
the same thing.
No,
that
we
this
need to
guy's
move
doing.
on.
I don't think they're doing the logs or.
Yeah, I've got a meeting.
It's a little
coming up.
different. It's another
Another
subject,
one,
so.
yeah.
All right, thank you very much for coming, and let's move on to the next.
Good to see some fellow agricultural faces here visiting.
So are we supposed to come back for the 7 o'clock meeting?
6:30.
It's at
6:30?
6:30. You're not required, but you're welcome to.
I would like hearing what they have to say.
Or is it the same group?
It's not the same group,
Plan
totally
Commission-
different people.
Plan Commission, so it'll be
Yeah,
good.
she will be there though.
Yes.
Are you the president?
Yeah, we'll be limited to 3 minutes.
Oh, no, we just want to listen,
So,
see what's
okay.
going on.
That's a good thing.
Very good,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Let's move on to the next agenda item, please. Discussion, Deanna, discussion of the Greenfield neighborhood.
Yeah,
Item
so,
B.
I wanted to put this on
Stay or-
your,
Oh, that's nice.
I wanted to put this on your agenda. I do not have a specific presentation or
Okay.
anything. What's happening with the neighborhood plans, we have our draft plans completed. The steering committees have recommended approval of both of the plans. This evening at Plan Commission, the consultant, and I think Brad's on with us too, will be doing a presentation on both of the plans to give you an update of what's happened, where we are, what the proposals are. We will hold a public hearing after that presentation, one public hearing for Greenfield and then another public hearing for South Stoner.
Will that be this evening?
It is,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Mhm. It is this evening. And then we are in a window where staff is accepting comments, questions, any problems that you might have with the neighborhood plans. This is our window for staff to accept any comments and questions and concerns. And we will accept any of your comments, questions from the public, from all of the committees and commissions, up until July 10th is the date. It's a lot of material to get through, and so we've set a deadline up until July 10th for any comments and questions. After that, staff will work through all of the public comments and questions and do the final edits and changes to the neighborhood plans. And then our expectation is to take both neighborhood plans back to Plan Commission and Council in September for final approvals.
Do you have a date for those yet? Yeah.
We certainly do.
16th.
Plan Commission, September 16th, and then September 23rd for Council.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Just a curiosity, in the steering committee, there was how many members of the steering committee?
The original steering committees both were a 9, I think, and Brad, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we started out with 9, but we might have lost 1 or 2 along the way.
I know you did in Greenfield.
Right, there were 9.
Okay, do you remember what the vote was?
The Greenfield vote was split. There was a majority that voted for, but it was not unanimous.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that.
It's 5-2.
Thank
Okay.
you, Brad.
Very good. Any other questions of the committee about that? That either of the neighborhood plans?
That meeting is tonight?
Yeah.
Is that separate from planning? Is that during the planning commission?
Yep, it's during Plan Commission, yep. And it'll be recorded, of course. The presentation will be recorded, so feel free to hop on the internets and the YouTubes anytime too. So
What were those dates again? I was gonna come back to the planning commission and
yeah,
council.
September 16th back to Plan Commission, and then September 23rd to Council. Mhm.
Okay. They may be long.
Can I
Mm-hmm.
can I say something quick?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say just about these two that I'm, not just the alder for this commission, I'm the alder for both of these neighborhood plans are in District 4. So if people have questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me as well at any time, basically. I've spoken to a lot of residents of Greenfield already, so just anytime, email me and we can set them up to talk, just for the record.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item D, discussion regarding new farm residences. This is only a discussion only. There will be no formal action taken on this. So, Deanna?
So I know that we've been talking kind of back and forth. Let me give a little bit of background. So staff is working through recertification of our farmland preservation zoning ordinance. Our intern is helping us through that process, and Brad is leading that up. One of the things that there has been some concern is when is a new farm resident allowed, and whether or not there should be any requirements tied to that. So, and this refers to a section in our farmland preservation zoning ordinance that allows, or I should say permits, a new farm residence. And I know that this was, I know I have a lot of questions about it, and I know that there was some interest in having some discussion. What I pulled together in your memo, the staff memo, was just really a list of the relevant statutes and references to our code of ordinances. So
there's a reference to model ordinance. What is that?
Yep. So the Department of Agriculture with the state of Wisconsin, I only know them as DATCAP, so maybe Brad can help me there. They actually, thank you. Yep. They have two model ordinances that they share with communities of how communities can structure their farmland preservation code of ordinances. Yeah. So that's what that refers to, is what the model ordinance is that the state has provided.
And staff's not at the point of recommending any one of them?
No. Staff is not. Staff would like to hear more from the committee and kind of understand some of the history and your thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Deanna. From the committee, would like Roger? I know you had expressed questions in the past.
This is a bucket of worms. When you look at, this is what I'm seeing. When I look at the, excuse me, the Fitchburg ordinance, and then you look at the county and the state ordinances referring to this, gosh, there's contradiction, there's verbiage in here that only a lawyer would probably understand. But a couple things that I see that we need to look at referring to our Fitchburg ordinance and how it fits in with the county and the state, where we have to work with that. But we've mentioned it before, two things. Number one that I'm finding is that we've been talking about that 50% gross income issue. Right. And if you look at our ordinance right now, we have that in there. We have it in there that you can build a home if you're the owner and the operator of the farm, and you can build a home if a parent or a child wants to build a home on this land, and then you have the 50% income deal. I maintain that we strike that 50% income deal as considered when we start to put this all together. First of all, it's hard to monitor.
It's impossible.
How are you going to monitor whether or not you almost have to ask for their tax
That's not
forms,
gonna
and we
work.
are not in a position to do that.
No.
So I don't think
And
that
the
that.
county won't do that either.
The other thing I'd like to have us perform and think about is when a person comes in and is using this type of a deal, where does the house get placed? Right now, you've got to play 35 acres and they can put it on. I don't think that's what we want. We will be defeating all of our efforts to be a diligent planners in the rural area on where we put homes if we allow that. I think that what we want to think about is how we integrate our RRDC, rural residential criteria, which has worked and we're using it right now on where homes can be placed. Now, one other thing that I found is that we talk about splits. Now, splits is, you get a home, you've got to have a 35-acre split to work with. In our RRDC, we do not mention that a split is required.
Because they're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
It's a homestead.
It's two different things, Roger.
But do we want? How do you not put that in there?
But it's two different things. It doesn't belong in there.
A person could build on a 35-acre parcel that is not using that parcel for agriculture if they had a split. A person could build on a 35-acre parcel if they are using it for their own agricultural purposes.
Did not have a split.
And
That's
did
the
not have
point.
a split.
That's the point,
That's
to be
the
able to
point.
keep a
It's
farmer on a farm.
It's almost like an item D.
It's two separate things.
Two separate.
Okay, but we want to make sure that we understand how they work together. But it has to be recorded someplace, and I think their splits are recorded.
Everything that comes through over the last 5 or so years, we record the split that was used and then the split and then what's remaining. It all gets recorded into the property records of Dane County. In the past, they didn't.
So, those are a couple things, and there's a lot more involved here because we've got county and state issues that have to be worked in with this. I think we might be liable with the county and state if we just go with ours and we haven't taken into consideration what they've got. They've got situations in here where on a Wisconsin statute, for example, that a farm is defined as $6,000 gross income, or another way to look at it is a taxable year of 2 years of $18,000. Now, how are you going to manage that? How are you going to police that?
You aren't.
You aren't, and so, but yet that's a state statute.
Yeah. Well, we are going to have, just to be clear, really what we're talking about here is our farmland preservation ordinance, our AX.
Yep.
And what we need to do next is get that recertified by DATCAP. And so in order to do that, we have to do that so that our farmers can use the farmland preservation tax credits.
Correct.
And so we are going to, our ordinance will have to be consistent with state law. There's no way around that. Yeah.
Sure.
That's why I don't think we can omit the 50% because I
Is
believe
that in there?
That's a
It's in the
requirement.
state.
It is.
I didn't realize
it is
that.
in the state.
Yeah.
So no, we cannot. We have to, in order to comply.
Okay, well, it's
We have to
a
leave it
moot
alone.
point. It's irrelevant.
Because
No one can
You
monitor
can't
that.
track
We
it.
just we don't actively enforce it.
And
We don't. Well, you can't. There is no way.
Oh, Brad, you were saying something, I think.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that it's been a while since I looked at it, but I believe that the 50% requirement is in the model ordinance, but it's not one of the statutory requirements for us to have our zoning certified.
Oh, great.
I would need to double check on that because, like I said, it's been a while, but that's my recollection.
Well, we would look way ahead of the curve if we didn't have it included, since it's a moot point.
We
would look so diligent.
If it's not in the state, then we wouldn't have to have it in ours. So.
Well, I think, I thought that the definition of the state statute for farm residents included the 50% if it's not the owner or a child of the owner. owner, operator, child, and then I thought the permitted and conditional uses then incorporate that definition. If that's something, yeah, we have to look
What
at.
about the state statute that Roger mentioned where a farm is defined as, produces $6,000 in gross farm revenues and.
That's a definition of a farm.
Yeah, I mean,
Plant pumpkins.
we can't, if that's a state statute, we have to abide by that too.
And the.
So this is related to our AX zoning ultimately, right?
Ag exclusive.
Yeah, our ag exclusive zoning. We have other farmland zoning districts, right? We have our AT, which is essentially the same, but we have AX. What's that?
Aren't we getting rid of like
Oh, no, I don't think so. Yeah.
Or like transitioning away.
Yeah, so the AT transitional zoning district actually serves a really important use because it's for those lands that we would expect over the next 10 or so years that would transition out of agriculture, but still it complies with agriculture. So I would not recommend getting rid of AT.
If your land is zoned AT, you do not qualify for this.
You do not.
It's just
For
the
the farmland
AX
preservation.
only.
Yep,
Only
that's
AX.
correct.
Only AX is the only one that does that. Ag small does not.
Circling back, the state does define farm residence as any of the following: an owner or operator of the farm, farm residence being occupied by any of the following: an owner or operator of the farm, a parent or child of an owner, or an individual who earns more than 50% of his gross income from the farm. Statute's sexist.
His or her.
It should be his or her.
It reads as.
But yeah, so that's state statute 90.19 sub A sub 3.
Thank you. Something I want to go back to that we talked about, Deanna, you had talked about the splits and how they're used. The 35 acres, a farmstead on 35 acres, and the splits that we had in the rural development were specifically two different things. The splits on the rural development, we as a committee set the standards to not have the house be placed directly in the middle, that it go off to the side, or that there's criteria, and we'll have that coming up here eventually when the Copus property comes up. But that was two different things, and it was not intended. The intention was not to, the 35-acre parcel at farmstead was not in the discussion at all when we talked about it was more for a family member, child, son, mother, in those criteria. And the placement of that was to make it as farmable as possible, but we did not address that in the 35-acre farmstead issue at all. It's not part of the discussion. So they're two different things.
For our committee.
Yes, all the, any permits that come before Plan Commission that are outside of the urban service area comes before you. I think where I have struggled with this, as you all recall, you created the base farm system. And so that base farm system said for every 35 acres, you get a claim. So where the tricky part, and there's good reasons for doing that, right? So that is to protect farmland, limit the additional development outside of the urban service area. I don't think I need to repeat all of that for you, but that base farm system was where you all began. And that base farm system.
79?
Yeah, it was based on the 79 farms, 1979.
1979.
And so we have a whole list of your base farms and a map of those base farms. And then the claims were assigned based on the size of those farms, 1 per 35 acres. So then the next step was, what happened was, if you were within a FUTA, you could use one of those claims. If you were outside of FUTA, you could use 2. So even if you had 5 or 7 claims, you could only use 1 or 2 depending on whether you're in or outside of a FUTA. And then the rest would have to be used in a rural cluster development. Where the tricky part is that we're getting into, that I don't have a really good handle on, is when one of our base farms has used all their claims, the claims are gone, and they've subdivided, and they're still zoned AX, and they have a 35-acre parcel. Can they put a house on that 35-acre parcel? Even though they've used their claims.
Sounds like a manipulation of the system.
And that's what has happened. Yes.
That's
Gorman.
That's Gorman, yeah.
That's where they would have to look at purchasing another
Claim. And so that's where we're at in this. That's exactly where we're at.
It would either have to be considered a 35-acre farmstead.
Well, that's where the code is ambiguous at best. I think the intention was to tell Gorman no. is what I think. I think the intention in your overall planning regime and setting up the base farms over these years and creating the claim system was that you've used your claims, and just because you have subdivided again and again and again doesn't mean that you are a farm. But so we have this gray area, and they said, oh yeah, we're a farm. And they said, yes, we get 50% of our income off of the farm. So that's my take on this. So Brad and I have talked about this. We're gonna get with the county and with the state to better understand their position on this. But that's kind of where I am on this, that we need to be fair. I don't want to run into a situation where farms are continuing to be subdivided and someone says, well, we've still got 40 acres here, 40 acres here, we're gonna put a house here, even without the claims.
So you would have to be the owner occupant of that property or the parent of that property. So it's not like this, like the renter, like that mulch guy that we saw.
Until you sell.
Throw
So what if Adam
Oh,
Gorman
until
comes
you
in and says,
sell.
I don't like this house anymore, I listed it for sale. I still have
And
this
it's just a
35
big lot.
acres. I'm gonna
Yeah.
make
I never
I'm
thought
gonna
of
make
that. Why? I did not. My mind doesn't go there.
It depends on you, in order to do that, you would have to have a larger piece than 35, because once you sell it, a piece off of it,
It would have to
then you
remain.
do not qualify.
And wouldn't you have to remain, that farmland would have to remain forever?
Let's take my property, for example. There's 108 acres, and if I used my building right, built a home, and then sold that home and its associated 35 acres, I could then say, well, I'm out of building rights, but I'm gonna build a new home on the remainder of my farm under this clause, and now I've put 2 homes effectively on my farm.
Think of it that
And then
way.
I sell it again and do it a third time, and there's nothing preventing me from doing that in the code. And I think I agree that was likely the objective, is to say, you've used your rights.
I think that was the original intent of the system.
Oh, interesting. I never considered selling.
Deanna and I disagree on that.
How do they put these solar panels up in this agricultural field? So
That's permitted use on agriculture. That is a permitted use on agriculture. Federal and state law.
Because we've been contacted numerous times.
Federal and state law mandated that. Period.
So Mark, can I just give you an example of our farm? We have a 2-flat and we have the farmhouse.
Yep.
And that's only because it was grandfathered in.
Yep.
But that's on the first 25 acres. Nothing that we built, it was already there.
Yep.
What's to stop us then from building further back on that farm, because we've never built a house there. We would be building our first home.
Nothing, a certified survey map and dividing off that parcel and then using this claim, and I think that that's the objective.
Because our son might have an interest in doing that.
You would have to use, you would have to use the RDC in that situation.
You could do it.
Unless it's considered a farmstead.
I would suggest coming to the committee in a future time as just informational purposes with your ideas.
If you were
At
going
a
to do that,
future time.
that would be how to come.
We bring our son with us.
So where are we at here?
We're very confused, I think.
No, I don't feel we are.
We're not?
It sounds like you and Brad are going to move ahead on this.
Well, we are going to have to, whatever we do bring forward with our exclusive ag zoning, it's going to have to be in compliance with the state law. At the end.
There's nothing we can do about this.
But we need do I understand we need a clarification on at the state level that you and Brad are looking into?
Yes, what I am hoping to do at the state level is to explain their interpretation of the base farm system. So state law does reference as a note the base farm system. And as a way to manage the overall development in our, and to preserve agricultural land. So what I need to have is a better understanding if that is, the base farm system is an expectation for us to continue, or do we need to have some sort of density requirements so that we say we're only going to allow this many houses out in the rural area? So I think Brad and I need to have some clarification on what the intent and what that means for us with this base farm system.
Interpretation. You have to work and coordinate that with Dane County, though.
We are going to have to coordinate with Dane County because our farmland preservation plan is within Dane County.
So we have to coordinate with both.
And you've got a timeline on that too, don't you?
We do.
And that timeline
is
about a year.
Okay, 1 year.
So can you and Brad put together for this committee an outline of what you want us to do exactly to enhance you to move forward with your work on clarification with the county and the state?
Well, I think it's very important for us to understand what your priorities are, what your concerns are, what you would like to see here too.
Preserving agricultural land.
I mean, so I rely on you all
Preserving
to understand what's happening too.
That's a whole other meeting.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a framework.
This is all for discussion.
Yeah, I want to understand how we are to be implementing that base farm system. We've adopted a base farm system.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our comp plan.
And it's adopted throughout the state.
Yeah.
The same system is statewide.
So what does that mean when we allow the Gormans to become a farm within our base farm system?
I wish that there were some way to legally look at or enforce that 50% clause. I mean, I think it's being used for deceptive purposes and without any ability to validate it.
That's a larger than us though, that's in the county.
It is, so I guess where I was going with that is when you do meet with the county and state, if they can get some clarification on that. But I think that's a state legislation thing.
Part of that issue was, and I fought this battle with the town of Oregon few years ago, when they required that the applicant bring all of their financial records.
Yeah, I understand that we don't have that ability.
And this county did, and when we brought them there, and I was the person that brought them there, I wanted to see what their privacy and what they have to protect those records from the public because you wouldn't want your private, you and your wife's private financial
Probably not in these
spread
minutes to this
out
meeting.
where anybody could get access to it.
No, I mean, and we don't
So,
want that kind of
And
thing.
the county dropped it like a hot potato.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that,
And
which is
why?
why I'm wondering why it's still there.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question.
That's a fair question.
So,
But just so you know where it came from.
so there are some constraints, given the way state law defines things, you know, like farm residence, et cetera. But it sounds like you're saying that in terms of a base farm system, we have different alternatives we can choose.
I don't know. I can't even say that.
Oh, okay.
All I know.
In the notes it said
Yeah.
you could. So I thought in, you know, Roger's request for an outline might be helpful to indicate what are the possible options so that we don't talk off our heads in ways that
And then we
are
can't even do it
impossible.
anyways, because the state
That's
or
fair.
county.
Okay. Did you get a feel for what the committee is,
Yeah, I
our
think
questions?
we can continue to work through.
Okay, all right, very good. That, and if you want to put something together and bring back to us, that would be wonderful.
We will definitely do that.
Thank you very much.
One more comment on that 50% of your income on that. Ask them how that preserves ag land, what their intent is on that, to preserve ag land, because I don't feel necessarily that's the best way to preserve ag land is to force someone to, you know, have to have an income on that property.
Doesn't it mean
Because-
farming it?
I think that's the intention,
Right,
but
because it
my
means they wanna
concern
make
with
sure it's
that
farmed.
50% goes beyond that in that it's a limiting factor.
Right.
I mean, if I didn't have a job outside of a farm, I would be very skinny.
Amen. Amen. Maybe that's why I'm so big.
Well, so much, it's the way the culture is right now. You have to go to town to pay for the.
It's been that way for a lot of years.
Yeah, that's not new.
It's been that way for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to Nancy's mom worked at the bank.
Right.
And supplemented the farm.
Sure.
Well, I mean, I've lived on the farm all my life and worked in town all my life.
Yeah, so
Have 35 acres, and let's say somebody builds a house in the center of it, does it still stay agricultural all around it?
It has to, and that's a part of our responsibility is
Right, but
to,
let's say this day and age, there's some people that can buy 35 acres and put an expensive house in the center, and they say, well, I'm not gonna do agriculture, I'm just gonna mow it and plant trees and stuff, and that's taken away from agriculture property. That's what-
Whereas you could build, you
Where
could
if they
say
had
2
2
acres of that
acres,
35.
then the other would be.
that's the rural residential,
Yeah.
We do not allow that.
criteria, we do
You don't
not.
allow the whole 40
We
feet.
do not wanna.
Under the rural development.
Yeah.
That would be our worst
Our
nightmare, a
ordinances
house
say
in
you
the middle.
can't do that.
Under the rural development.
So you have a house for, or a place 35 acres and you stipulate 2 acres for the house and that's what I'll mow and the rest stays
Under
agricultural.
the rural development criteria, yes.
Yeah, but what
Under
do
the
you gain?
farmstead, no.
You don't
There's
gain.
2 things.
Oh,
2 things. So they're 2 very distinctly different things.
but then how do you do the one? So then you have to take the.
There is, the one that was stipulated, the last one where this came into question, it did fall in, with the exception of the driveway, it did fall into a non-agricultural area, and it is, the majority of it stayed agricultural.
Yeah, we were careful, I think, with that.
I'm very conscious of that.
one thing I look back to on that, wasn't that whole property an outlot?
No,
It was
they,
a lot
we did a CSM and they created 2 lots.
Because an outlot has no ability.
Correct.
Remember, a 35-acre parcel with a large home on it. Very good chance that will never become a huge
A
development of
condominium?
apartment complexes.
Exactly, that's why I think that.
So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from personally.
I think me too, in many respects.
So that's,
rather
Well, and the
one
tax
home.
difference is different too. You're gonna pay taxes on the house on 2 acres versus the house on a,
It could be different.
yeah.
We get about, what, 6 or 7 tax bills on ours.
Is that all?
Very
we
almost
have?
talk to you guys after the meeting on that, so, but
Could I-
we need to wrap up the meeting
Is
so
it
that
finished?
everybody
Agenda?
can move on. Deanna, do you have anything else for staff
Nope.
report?
No updates on, from the staff side.
Very, very good, okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second. Motion's made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the like sign. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Well, that's quick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did we-
That's always the fastest motion to pass, isn't it?
The 6 or the 7 things.